This archive for you as well. Right. You ready? So the first question, to throw this back upon you, is what is a good definition or working definition of form? I need it from you. I have to work off you. So start throwing off.
A method of doing,
Okay.
a set of principles for action.
So in that is a method, could be other methods of form.
It's the result of your breathing, your structure, and your movement.
Somebody can read it.
I didn't read that.
Okay. And to repeat it, what Robert said was that it's the result of your breathing, your structure, and your movement. Okay, good. Let's go back to answering the question I posed to Jack, and that, are there other methods of form? Okay, so there are many different methods of form. So one person could have a particular form and somebody else could have another form. Is that true?
Everyone's movement is unique.
Okay, everyone's movement is unique. Okay. Okay. How does that impact form? Somebody else. I don't want to...
Well, I'd say that form is a prototype.
Okay, great. So in that it's a prototype, it's something from which we're all aspiring?
Exactly.
Okay, so there's some universal principles that are there that we express individually, right? Okay. This is going to stop us from heading down a path we may not want to go, and that there is an ideal form for us as individuals that expresses certain universal principles that connects to that results from breathing structure and movement. However, none of us can impose our expression of form on somebody else. It's going to be a completely subjective path. I can give you points by trying to intuitively assess what your form is and ask you questions about it. And you're going to be called upon today to help intuitively assess someone else's form. And it's going to be based upon the fact that you're already masterful of teachers. You just have to realize it. You have to pick up on the cues that you're given. And we're going to try and call out that inner coach today. However, the question is, what interferes or interrupts form?
The absence of breathing, structure.
Okay, yes, absolutely, the opposite. No, you're absolutely right, and Jack, you may not dominate all the answers. What interferes with our form?
Reactivity.
What did you say?
Performance
Anxiety is definitely one. How does that manifest in us? Okay, tension is one. Somebody else? Shortness of breath. Okay, constricts our breathing, limits the volume.
Start thinking about it, analyze it, overanalyze it.
We get stuck in a feedback loop up in our gray matter, which is of no use in that department because we should be performing, not be anxious of it. Okay, can you see that these are physical things that are interrupting our form, right? What are some preconditions that would also be interrupting our expression of form?
The ego.
Okay, sure, absolutely. And God knows that that's my battle. You know, everybody has their own inner opponent we have to deal with. Like right now, I'm fighting them off because I'm up here and I have a job to do. And yet, the focus being I have certain expectations of myself. When we're doing an exercise and you're being critiqued, you have certain expectations of yourself that actually compete with your ability to perform because you need to be in the event, right? That you're going to see that. Oh my God! If you haven't seen it already, you're going to see it today and tomorrow. However, what I'm saying is, what physical preconditions do you have that can interrupt your form, your expression of it, when you're doing an exercise?
Residual muscle tension.
Absolutely. And when it becomes chronic?
Sensory motor amnesia.
Okay.
and bounce
Yes,
well.
if you don't know that you can move a certain way, somebody else is the very person. But I'm looking for examples in your life of preconditions.
Shoulder injury?
Shoulder injury.
Physical trauma.
Okay, the physical traumas that you each express, right? When you get to that point, when we're doing an exercise, and that's interrupting your form, you do not continue, right? You try and either find a way around it that's structurally safe, or you step out of that exercise and you work on a particular joint mobility or range of motion exercise that will work on that area since you can't do that exercise. You can always be doing something. So there are going to be certain things that we can no longer do because of the situation, the baggage we've picked up, right? It's up to you to determine that, right? You and your physician. It's not the trainer's job or coach's job to say, no, just suck it up and push through. Okay? And don't treat yourself like that because that's where you further embed trauma. Well, or cause more micro trauma, whatever the case would be. So please don't don't allow your performance anxiety to push you through something you shouldn't. That leads me to asking about what is happening physically in you to cause this arousal. When we're talking about performance anxiety, or we're talking about the shortness of breath, or we're talking about our ego interrupting us, what's happening physically in you? Especially those of you that have already read Body Flow. Hormones are different. Okay, it'll get there. Ready, Rob? No, John, I'm sorry. That's one voice over there. It's separated.
Then you have a parasympathetic arousal first.
Right. Can you explain that for me?
Well, actually I'm more comfortable with the sympathetic side of things, but
Just basically.
well, basically your nervous system picks up some sort of a novel, either noxious or happy stimulus, and it starts to prepare to deal with that.
Right.
And to me it looks like steps because you have the first step, and if that's sufficient to deal with the stimulus, then that's as far as you go, and you have, level 1 of arousal.
Right.
And then if that is insufficient, perceived as insufficient, which I'm a little bit hazy about, which I'm excited to learn about, if it is perceived as insufficient, then I'll go to stage 2, which is when you start getting more hormones secreted. And depending partially on your unconscious, how you deal with it, and partially on past training, I believe, will determine to what degree you have a trickle or a dump.
So when, as Dave said, when do we get to the point, and somebody else, because that was beautiful, when do we get to the point where we start to get into that negative self-dialogue, which starts us in a downward spiral, impacting our ability to perform? Somebody else.
As soon as you start focusing on it.
Right. Because we're getting two different signals that are competing for each other. Right? We're getting the signal of the performance. Like if we were in a fight, it would be the danger signal, or our opponent. In this case, it would be the signal of performing the exercise. Right? We feel the tension building. We feel the force being impacted on our body. Right? Then we also feel that internal arousal signal. So we have two signals that are competing for each other. We focus on the wrong one, all of that positive energy that's being built up is going to be negatively charged. That makes sense? And you're thinking, how is this going to impact me today? I hope that you will be able to answer that question for yourself. But it's those two competing signals that starts to store energy that needs to be discharged. And if it's not discharged, it becomes fear reactivity, conditioned reaction, like flinching or bracing, or reluctance to do a particular exercise. I'm too old. I know I feel that creeping in, talking to me in the back of my head. But it's that voice that we actually have to address, whether it's a serious call about a precondition, or whether it's a reluctance due to performance anxiety. So it's those two signals that we're going to be focusing upon differentiating. When we're exercising, like I said, this is an introduction. Verbosity will be done, then practical application. But we have to make sure that our performance goals are key on this. We have two definitions of universal principles for form. The first definition Robert answered for us, and that is the result. He said the resulting from breathing, movement, and alignment. What I would like to add to that is the efficient integration of breathing, movement, and structure or alignment. Efficiently integrating them. Because if you're focusing too much on one, you can sacrifice the other two elements. They'll start to deconstruct. So we're going to be constructing our performance goals in little components that will integrate those along the way, which is the next definition of form we're going to work on. And that is the seamless chaining of motor components for the exercise. We're going to break down all of the exercises into three components so that we see that in each component, breathing, structure, and movement are synced up. Okay? It's pretty simple. It's actually very simple. That gets me to, let's talk about just a moment what sophisticated training is. In the past, I called it complexity training or complex training. I prefer the term sophisticated training because complex training tends to bring upon itself a lot of weight that I don't like, a lot of baggage. The difference between complexity and sophistication being what? Look for your own answer. I'm trying to come up with what Sonnon would want.
Complexity makes it sound like it's going to be harder, more difficult, more complex, and sophisticated makes it sound smarter.
All right, more mature.
Yeah.
A more mature version of your own expression of form, right? A more refined skill, rather than looking at complexity as just adding more and more patchwork to it until it becomes too overbearing that you can't remember it, like the game Simon, right? Make sense? Okay. The problem is with a lot of the conventional fitness and martial arts standards is that they assume when we arrive at training that we're a blank slate, that we're an empty cup, and we're not. We have all this junk inside of us. All that baggage is actually what we have to first remove. And that impediment to our expression of form is what is going to be the focus on the first day. If we can sweep away and identify what junk we should be working on first, or if we can identify what is impeding our form, maybe we can't get rid of it today, but at least be aware of it, then we can actually start to build on progressive resistance training. So does that format make sense? Today we're going to first look at the impediments to our training, because we are not tabula rasa. None of us. We all have baggage that we're carrying that competes with our ability to perform. The second day we're actually going to add weight to it. Okay? Great. Safety precautions. Before I get to safety precautions, let me just add in a couple more things about kinetic chains. Does anyone, any PTs or physical trainers have a good working definition of a kinesiologic definition for kinetic chain? There are three different definitions, and I haven't used one of them. Okay. If I put my hand down on the mat, the action of my elbow, it's going to be pretty much determined. I mean, there's a lot of things that it can obviously do, especially as I add in rotation. But that being a closed kinetic chain, there is a predetermined action from my elbow with my hand planted because I have a secured joint and a secured joint. An open kinetic chain would be my hand up, so the action of my elbow can move in a lot more random ways, seemingly random, or it's a lot more difficult to determine where it's going to move. Kinesiologic definition of open and closed kinetic chains. Okay, just a basic overview. There's a muscular therapy definition of kinetic chain, and that's based upon two things. And you're going to have to get with Dr. Eric Cobb, who runs mostly the professional healthcare aspect of the health system, my health system. Two different aspects, back force transmission systems, and that being, handedness, for instance. If he's right-handed, he's left-footed. If he's left-handed, he's right-footed. The same way a kinetic chain will form dysfunction across the body. So if he has a dysfunction in his left shoulder, you can usually identify that some type of impact trauma resulted from the right side of his body. And it forms a musculoskeletal kinetic chain across his body of dysfunction. And you can look to palpate different points and in order to assess where this point of origin is for the referred pain. Okay. Obviously, that doesn't apply in all cases because if you have a sharp point of impact, then that's going to be the resulting damage. However, there will also be referred pain somewhere in the body. So that forms a kinetic chain, back force transmission systems. And we're going to be somewhat going over kinetic chain diagnostics and trying to assess where our initial point of origin is and what type of range of motion therapy we can do to start to address that issue and see if we can relieve the tension or the bracing that's formed in that injury. We're not going to be going heavy because that's outside of the scope of what we're doing. This is mostly going to be exercise. But because of the nature of the exercise, you're going to be focusing upon feeling that tension, letting it melt so that you only have the contraction necessary to perform the exercise. Not general tension, selective tension. Okay? It's a completely different mentality than the average gym mentality, right? Where it is tense everything, which actually competes for your performance, especially as we get more and more dynamic. The last definition, which is the physical training definition, a kinetic chain is built upon three components, beginning, middle, and ending. Very simple. Three components. So if you have a particular exercise like kettlebell snatch, I'm sorry, I was looking, you're a kettlebell instructor and there's a kettlebell next to you. Sorry. You think in terms of the kettlebell snatch, you don't think, well, where's my breathing? Where's my alignment? What's my foot placement? You want to integrate those into three components that you can use as a mnemonic and hit. So you think rip, float, and drive. Right? That way, those mnemonics are anchored together with your breathing, your structure, and your movement. That makes sense? That way you can give yourself direction instead of, going into infinite digression of there. Now it's ready. It can become too overwhelming. We have to make it concise into three motor components. With the kinetic chain, our goal is three different things. The methods we're going to use today are matching, patching, and hemming to take our exercises together. I'm going to say it a lot, but you might want to write this down. Matching, patching, and hemming. A match is the most easy to access, and that is when you take the ending component of one exercise and it weaves seamlessly into the beginning component of the next exercise. That's almost a given. It shouldn't be difficult for you to match up exercises. It will be difficult in certain ranges of motion because your body has just forgotten how to move that way until you palpate it through a particular exercise. And then you dust off the cobwebs, and then it's easier for you to recall. And the more that you watch each other perform new kinetic chains that you're going to come up with, the more that your body starts to think in non-conventional manners. The second is patching. And the patching is that you have to take an additional motor component and wedge it in between two exercises in order to chain them together. A good example would be, I'm going to grab one that we have. Okay, first a match. I'll give you an example of a match. We have a spinal rock backwards to a toe touch, and we have a lateral shoulder roll. So the spinal rolls are rather simple, right? The ending position, the ending component of the spinal rock happens to be the beginning component for the lateral shoulder roll. So if you match those together, they sync up relatively seamlessly. It's not difficult to match two exercises together as long as you look at them critically as components, as a series of components. An example of patching How can I grab that quickly? The long leg roll would be a good one. So one moment. Standing shin roll. That would help. Okay. How about I give you the whole exercise? We're actually going to be working on this kinetic chain for a moment. In a moment. A few hours. So we start in a hurdler squat. We do a leg swoop. We end in a shin twist. As we come into a ascending shin roll, we would come back to a flat foot squat unless we add an extra component of a scoop to end in a hurdler squat. To start again, opposite direction. So we have to add in an extra component to extend our legs, right? If you don't think in terms of patching, and exercise flow will become uncoordinated, and you become very frustrated. So at any time, especially if you're facing a precondition, you're going to have to monitor the exercise to wedge in components to make it work for you, right? That makes sense? When you add weight to it, you really need to be aware of where you need to add in extra components if you have a condition. Okay, we'll get to it. And the last is hemming. A hemming is if you take the first component of a second exercise and pull it up and adhere it to the end of the middle component of the prior exercise. You follow me? Okay, so you have two exercises, so each have three components. Beginning, middle, and ending. The ending component of the first exercise does not meet up with the beginning component of the second exercise. Like a jigsaw puzzle like these. Doesn't match up. However, you take this and you move it up to the end of the middle component of the prior exercise. Those two do match up. So basically you're removing the ending component of the first exercise in order to bring the flow together. That make sense? I'll give you an example. Okay. This will be sufficiently disturbing. Now, I just showed you a long leg swoop, right? What I need to do is to move from this shin box into the forward spinal wave. I have the leg swoop in between, but if I take it from the shin box up and swing my leg, I end up here in the full exercise. So I actually have to chop it in half in order to go forward with the spinal wave. So I come up, and as I'm swinging, I stop at my knees and then go into the spinal wave. So when you chop exercises, we're going to be doing it, don't worry. It's simple. It's simple. If you look at it in terms of components, we're taking this exercise and chopping it here, folding, and collapsing. Okay? So you look at exercises as a series of components. You actually work with what's interior. You don't look at them as, like our danger that we had in martial art was looking at technique as static. There's an absolute way that you do it. If you do not do it this way, you are wrong. And that absolutism actually competes with our ability to let our own particular style come out. Right? I've seen so many people, they move with such amazing fluidity, and when I ask them what they've done, they have no idea. And not only because their head wasn't there, but because they just made it up. Somebody made up the techniques in every martial arts style. Why not you, right? Why are you making up techniques in your style? There's nothing wrong with you, and there's nothing special about somebody else. So, matching, patching, and hemming. Now I'll go on to the safety precautions. Okay. First, I think I've said this already, but you need to monitor your preconditions. So a lot of you have already approached me. If you have a particular area that needs special attention, either proactively stop and monitor your space and work on an exercise that will help rehab or prehab that area, or drop down the speed even more to go more slowly and more smoothly, which is actually what we should all do. The slower we can go, the more we're going to achieve, right? There's sufficient time for explosion once we get out of our own way, you know? The second thing is, when you do experience pain, that's an indication, that's a signal that something else is going on. But you are all going to experience discomfort. And it's not because I'm melting your brain or frying your CNS. It's because your tension is getting in the way of your ability to perform. Do not fight through or over top of that tension, because it's actually that tension that's the goal today. You're actually setting to task to melt that tension. Because flexibility isn't a matter of deforming the tissue. It's a matter of being able to contract it from full relaxation to full tension. And if there's unnecessary tension present, you're not going to be able to contract it. That's why a super tense guy punches with the speed of an elephant. Right? So we're going to be moving from supple Gumby to tomorrow, fully tense piece of iron. That's our goal. Long story about it. Wow. We'll talk about that later. But tension and relaxation are two wheels of the same cart. I had a story about Paulo Tattalin when we first met was at a seminar I gave in Minnesota. And interesting cat. Didn't know what he was going to do. He showed up. And we were talking after the seminar. And he says to me, "Can you show me again that shock absorption? I didn't really see what you were doing." And I showed him. We absorbed the blow. And we let it wave through our body. And he asked if he could punch me. Sure. And he hit me. And it was a pretty good shot. And I moved and I never seen that before. And he goes, "You hit me." And I gave him a soft blow, and he looks at me, shakes his head, and he goes, "Will you please hit me?" I tapped him a good one, and I mean, he had an iron grill on his ab, and not like Clint Eastwood, but I mean, it was solid. And he made the comment that in the former Soviet Union, the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing. There are more than one way to do something, to accomplish a task. But more important than that, more important than alternate paths, is that they're both complementary, right? Two wheels of the same cart. You can't have full tension without full relaxation. Nor can you fully relax unless you can tension some of the bases of ENF, right? Okay. That was a bit tangent. Trajectories will be everything. Conventional lifting tends to go one direction. Which direction? We tend not to have people standing above us. However, when you're swinging a lethal projectile, you have a new dimension to monitor. That's why a lot of people tend to swing club bells in cages. I'm not kidding. There are cage areas that do a lot of innovative gyms. But you have extensions that are unique now, plus another 2 or 3 feet beyond the range of motion of your length. Okay? You need to predict that before it happens, not to check to see how far. Not just the person, but dueling with club bells is an exercise in folly. And if you climb club bells, you're going to expect some vibration. It's not pretty. Right? Also, today, when you're rolling, so that you don't destroy something, you need to monitor the direction in which you're moving your body. Video club bells falling in won't be nice. There'll be a table set up there, and there'll be plenty of people. So not only do you need to monitor yourself, but you need to monitor where your partner will be moving. All of that. All of these people are your partners, and you're going to find that out later today. Last point. Tomorrow, know, we're going to have a Q&A section. So if you have any questions about your particular technique, your expression of form, ask them at any time. But if you have theoretical questions, because of the nature of this seminar, I want you to ask those questions at one time. Write them down, and don't hesitate to jump off, grab some water, right? Jump off, write something down, because we're going to be exercising the whole time. But keep it for the Q&A at the end, unless it directly impacts your performance of that particular exercise. Because we, as Dave said, we don't want to get into thinking about it too much. Analysis begets paralysis, especially here. We're going to be moving in some wacko ways. So any initial questions before we start? All right. I'll have you spread out and just experiment with the exercise, right? And then we'll have you line up and we're going to travel with the exercise. That way we're introducing a little bit of chaos and stress of performance. That's going to be very important because it's not how well you perform when you're sitting and oming. It's how well you perform when there's more and more stress coming upon you. Everybody can withdraw and relax. There's no retreat here. You have to face it, especially as instructors. You're going to be put to task by somebody with questions that will be uncomfortable because they don't understand initially that all the answers are on their own. They should be answering this themselves because we've been taught to externalize issues, right? So performance anxiety will be introduced as we're all critiquing and chuckling at each other for how oafish we are. We all are. Okay, first exercise. Why don't you stow your notebooks along the side somewhere and make sure that you remove any accoutrements and put that into your flesh. So we're going to start from a ball and foot squat. Make sure you're lifting from ground to coccyx. As you move, the rotation will be on the ball of foot. Weight transfer into your far leg in order to free the mobility of your opposite leg. As you creep, you're moving forward by rotating the weight transfer forward, not the destructive duck walking that we were taught in wrestling and in grade school. Here, rotate forward, and if you can get a close-up of this, when you rotate, you're coming off of this knuckle in order to screw in your extension on the back leg. So as you move, extend yourself by rotating and screwing the back leg forward, okay? Don't go over top of your knee. And don't make it linear, because you can't. It's impossible to move in a linear way. We only get the illusion of moving linearly. So spread out and just experiment on it, and we'll get to line up in a second. Okay, which component is this? It is not a stance. We're passing through this valve, okay? But which component of the exercise do we pass through when we're in this position? The middle. So if this is hinky, the whole exercise is. It's not, the goal is always the middle component. The ending and the beginning work themselves out as long as you hit the middle. If you sacrifice the middle in order to get the beginning and get the ending, right? It looks like we've accomplished the exercise. But actually, all we've done is increase our impediment, right? It's the middle component of every exercise. These just give us an indication. When we add weight, it's almost dangerous to look at that middle component too much, right? Because it's so impacting. Like if you're in a dead spot, in a dead zone. But it's that middle component that's critical. So, come back to it. Make me do this over 25. Now, as you're moving the knee down and shifting the weight backwards. That puts your mass over top of your front leg. In order to move that direction, this needs to be completely free. No weight over here. So you have about 95 on your front leg. Now, taking the inside knuckle of your large toe, move that forward, back into this little component again. Should be that little component. Weight transfer back. Middle component. Now we have. So let's line up down here, and we're going to try. So we're starting for, I'm going to be moving this direction. In order to go this direction, you're shooting the shin through in the direction that you're traveling. Now, this is no different than this, because this is a free leg. It looks like it's complicated, but all you're doing is taking this structure and placing it here instead. Okay? It's not difficult, it's just a different relationship. So as you drop this here, you're going to pull your toes back and screw up onto this foot. Screwing up is good here. Then shoot the opposite leg through, screw up onto that leg.
What is that called, Coach?
Shin twist.
Shin twist.
This is a very imaginative term. Slow learners program with making things. Okay, so let's spread out and try it. Your body instantly releases a stretch reflex to protect you. This is not you doing something wrong. Okay, this is the first thing we need to realize. You're not doing anything wrong because you're not relaxing into the exercise. You see what I mean? Your body is giving you a positive survival tactic by bracing against it. However, you don't need that tactic. So you can choose to do a different tactic by giving your body a different signal, right? If you tell your body to do something else, it can adopt a new skill. That's why as we get older and older, when we try and do like wakeboarding, all of a sudden we're a bulldozer for water, right? It's like, and then, I mean, you've got this great rooster tail, you know, firing over top of you because your body's still aboard even though you're submerged. That's not personal experience. You need to relax into every new skill so that your body can adopt a new signal, all right? All right, next exercise. This will be a little bit harder. So the first position we're going to adopt will be a flat foot squat. Right? This should be a little challenging, but what I would like you to do is relax your hamstrings and let your sits bones come down so that you're still lifting from crown, not here where you're having to contract muscles in order to keep yourself aloft. This should be you balancing. Right? Relax. The next portion of the exercise is to move from a flat foot squat into what I call the Cossack squat. This is going to become challenging because it initially feels like you're contraindicating your upper and lower leg, meaning that your heel stays planted instead of what most people are going to do immediately is I've touched my knee. Okay? And that is what we talked about earlier of trying to get to the ending component of that movement. Beginning component, middle component. Middle component is with the heel down. Ending component. Open up your pelvis and allow yourself to relax here. You need to relax. You're going to feel initial tension trying to resist this exercise. Then you need to tell your body different signal, you'll be okay. I can still shoot this guy teaching this. In order to remove this, you're actually pressing off your front leg and weight transferring back onto this knuckle. So you're pressing back and rotating your pelvis. Not trying to lift this up by removing mass and then contracting to pull this into place. And then here we are again. Weight transfer backwards. And by doing so, by weight transferring backwards, you're already in the middle component for this knee drop. NA component. Weight transfer. Weight transfer. So you see the little oscillation. We're going to put this in motion in a moment. So spread out and work on it. I need a turret. Okay? Now I want you to do it this slowly. So as your weight transferring to this leg, you're allowing yourself to have a bit of a half step. But notice that the foot is staying flat the whole time. You're not. And those that have been doing this for a while, you can be adventurous. The shin roll passes through this position. Now, for those of you that were doing the toe point, you're ahead of the game. From this position, as you toe point, all you're going to do is allow your sits bones to rock down and then over top of your lower leg to coax your heel over. Pull them back. Switch. Massage it over. This is what people will try and do. Sit down on this. You've signed a waiver if you do that nonsense. Okay? Watch. Heel down, point your toes, relax, and slide over. Allow your heel to rotate over so that this is a nice closed back position.
Coach, is that like method 3 with your leg?
Do not make references to something that no one else knows.
It doesn't matter.
Okay? Only get into that. I appreciate the recognition, but different format. Okay. So let's spread out. As we shin roll, we're going to move from this position into shin box, where we're going to be quite often. Okay. In the shin box, this is not the shin box. Your butt, both your sit bones are touching. You're not up. This tension is going to work against you. Okay, so if you feel this contortion with your pelvis lifted to the left or to the downside, relax, because we're going to pass through this. We're going to action the shin box switch. To sit to the opposite shin box. Okay? So I want you to spread that out and work on dropping this leg down, shin rolling, back into the shin box, sitting to the opposite shin box. Okay? Let's spread out. We're going to work, suspend what we just did, and we're going to do something seemingly independent. Okay? We're going to start from the shin box and place ourselves into a triangle squat, meaning this leg comes tightly. We're back here on the inside of our foot. And our instep is flush with our knee. Nice and compact and relaxed around the coccyx. From this position, you're going to remove the mass from your heel as you allow the knee to travel. So the point of rotation is actually in between here, if a rod were driven down. To free it, heel on the ground, and come back to standing. So we work with the shin guards, keep this tight. Now, imagine the linear motion of the squat creep, the initial exercise. Catch, flush, and come back up. All right, let's go work on that component, and we're going to chain it all together in our first hand chain. Although some would say I should be using a mirror. Fix that deuce. Okay, so when we put it all together, we move from the knee drop to the shin box switch, to the shin box, to the ascending shin bolt. Okay, let's do this again. We're moving in this direction. Now, what happened here if I'm traveling this direction? Why am I not here?
Because then you go back around here. You're doing a circle.
Someone said I do that all the time, talking. However, we're traveling. So you have to hem, right? Pull up the beginning component of the beginning of this kinetic chain so that you're not doing the ending component and going too far and going in a circle. So you're cutting off part of the range of motion. You're traveling this direction. This one. Got it all mastered. Just allow it to be in motion. Okay, what I was saying before, the three principles we use to attack these three methods. The three principles being disinhibition, neural drive, or nerve force, and intramuscular coordination. Disinhibition has to do with our attitude towards the training. If we have the attitude that this is working out, that this is growing, if we're attacking the exercise and we're outcome-based rather than performance-based, then that stretch reflex will engage to inhibit our ability to perform it because it's uncomfortable. We haven't moved in that direction. It doesn't want to move that. Just remember that the body's doing something positive, not something negative. It's just not what we want it to do. Right? It's a survival mechanism that has been very beneficial to us to stabilize our joints. Right? We don't attack your own survival mechanisms. We have to disinhibit that by changing our attitude towards it. Nerve force, the best way I've come across to explain nerve force is by its corollary opposite. Anybody ever had a stinger? Okay? You get this stinger in your neck and back, and all of a sudden, and this just happened to me 2 months ago, was my first severe experience doing it. And it was, once again, back force transmission, because I was working on, I'm going to tell you the whole story so this relates. I was working on a new deck, a new longboard, 44 inches, really carving some deep routes coming down this run. But because it was such a long board, and it was one directional, not two directional, all of my training was hyper-stabilizing this ankle and hyper-mobilizing this ankle as I would pump with opposite leg. So all of this stabilization was causing tension. Remember, back force transmission comes across to this side. And all of a sudden, I was working with a new piece of equipment, a new type of protocol, which we'll see tomorrow. Okay. And that twinge at the pec, right, happens to be a point of dysfunction that relates in through here. And that muscle tension started a nerve impingement, and of course the doctors are saying, cortisol. Okay, that's their solution, right? Not PT. Thinking, the PTs, they're just midway boys that get us some clients. Sorry. Rant mode off. Right. Now, the stinger happened to drop 80% of my strength of this arm, so that my daughter is performing things I can't do, and she's 14 months old, having trouble getting the sweater over my head, because all of a sudden, that tension is impinging upon a nerve, which is limiting the strength. Neural drive, or nerve force, is the opposite of that. It's the same thing, but it's positive. Something like synaptic facilitation. The more confidence you have, the more desperate you are, you can draw in energy and apply it. Okay? I'm not saying being desperate here. You have to achieve this. But get out of your own way so that there's a clear path for your body to travel. Intramuscular coordination, intramuscular coordination, not intermuscular coordination, has to do with focusing on these middle components rather than the beginning and ending component, so that you're chaining it together. If you focus on the beginning and ending, then you're not increasing your coordination. And then finally, when you put those three together, you've gotten out of your own way, you're allowing your body to travel, and you're linking together your movement. So it's not really a new skill. You follow me on that? Okay, good. Because long leg creep is kind of difficult. We're going to move from a flat foot squat, weight transfer to this leg, so that this is free. And as it's free, we'll extend it. Once it's extended, just like the squat creep, we remove this, but as we're removing it, we drop this knuckle to the floor and move from a shooter squat down into a Cossack squat to a knee switch. Cossack squat, shooter squat. Step, 3-leg long. Switch, and we go again. Trying to keep within the cone of filming for you. As you move, let's spread out. We're going to go through point by point. I'll call out the positions, and you keep moving through them. Down a little, I want to get our upper bodies a little mobile. So we're going to do the arm screw, but we're going to do it a little more sophisticated, okay? From our arms out, we're going to lift one shoulder and start the knee drop. As we knee drop, when we rotate over top, these are tethered to the opposite walls. Elbows are locked. Only the shoulders rotating. We rotate all the way down to the knee. Rotate back to the knee. I'm going to add in one more performance hold. Knee down. When your knee comes down, you're extending backwards like you're wringing out a washcloth. Okay, that'll get the full rotation across your body. So first, on your own, knee drop. When we spread out, knee drop. Then, as you come back, place your heel down. You probably won't get it all the way down, but your goal is to move in that direction. To stretch out and twist your body. Take a shooter squat and make it into a top. A play top, like it is. So we're in the shooter squat, but we're moving in that direction. That means to keep this unit stable and move it in the opposite direction. From shooter squat, Cossack, shin switch, shooter squat. Rotate. This really should cover, the shin should be parallel to the mat. Okay, spread out. Actually, hip gymnastics. You really need to concentrate on opening your pelvis. If you don't open your pelvis, this is going to be probably one of the most arduous exercises in the next compartment. You have to expand your pelvis. From here, only then is this leg free to travel when you move into the next rolling shin. So as you free this leg, it begins to swoop. Only when you're pointing forward do you begin to contract to a shin box to switch and free again. Don't try and move from here to here. Okay. You can see there's a chink in the chain, like a bicycle that misses a link, right? You don't want to jump ahead because that's a poor hem. You follow me? So when you're spinning, point, then contract. And then to the side. Keep it as one unit because there's less for you to rotate. If you rotate from your upper leg, there's less for you to rotate than if you do this. So much more action involved. So keep it as a unit. Okay. Let's spread out. Concentrate on aligning your heels so that you're going in a straight line. And a lot of people, remember, hip snap in order to free your leg. Here, expand your hip until it's flush. Then your leg's free to travel. If you're trying to move your leg from here, it's like trying to kick somebody from here. Okay? Extend your pelvis, then you have a greater range of motion, right? It's like trying to lift somebody from here, as opposed to lift them from here, with the pelvis expanded. Because I like to lift other humans. So, starts in your hurdle squat, moves to a frontal squat like the long leg creep. Moves to the side almost like the shin twist. But then as your hip comes down, you're freeing the leg to come back into the hurdle squat. Right? So you have 1, 2, 3, 4. As you continue to smooth this out, do a shin twist. It's going to become very muscular because you're going to have to press in order to keep yourself aloft because you don't have the circular torque to keep you buoyant. Okay. Gobbledygook. Makes sense when you do it. Right. Let's spread out. We're going to put a patch in this to make it move forward, and the patch is just a squat creep. God. 1. So you stop the revolution, creep forward. Okay? No problem. Let's do 3 lines, just because of the sake of space. I had a rather severe lower back stinger that had me bedridden for 3 days in Russia at a very inopportune time. That lower back injury created a lot of bracing for me in this region, and it took me quite a bit of courage and diligence to continue to work in order to free the tension that was created, that stored energy from that injury. And I say courage because it's amazing the thoughts that sublimate, right? You think, I'm too old for this. I have responsibilities. I can't afford an injury. I have to get up for work tomorrow. And that dialogue is not us. That dialogue is a survival mechanism. as a result of our body protecting itself. It's not something we should fight, it's something we should be aware of and say, valid, but not right now. This next exercise was particularly challenging for me, so I thought I would share. Okay. This heel goes up there, but these hands don't leave. The goal is to relax, all right? The arms stabilize while the hips relax and open, and gravity acts for you, okay? Gravity acts. Those of you super flexible Gumby people, make sure that you're not over-rotating your spine quickly. Go through it slowly and smoothly, because you can have a sudden whoosh, because you don't have the deceleration to slow your body down, right? Go through it slowly and smoothly, regardless of the fact that you're flexible. Let's spread out. Really check your trajectory. Think about this. Because you're moving in a non-standard way, you could end up doing a funky heel kick to your partner. Okay? Let's spread out.